Hey, Brady. I now call this meeting of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association Student Senate to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to begin our Student Senate meeting taking place on Thursday, November 2nd, 2023, with a land acknowledgement. We recognize that the Kansas State University, as the first land-grant institution, stands on the ancestral lands of the Kaw people. Our state of Kansas is home to 4 federally recognized Native nations: the Iowa, Kickapoo, Prairie Band Potawatomi, and Sac and Fox. We must remember that the land serving as the foundation for this institution was and still is stolen land acquired by white settlers. We pledge our commitment to creating decolonized spaces at the university while advocating for the support and future success of Indigenous faculty, staff, and students at K-State. Speaker Pro Tem Kappelman will take it away with our first roll call.
Broughton. Bruckner. Cup. Koch. Compton.
Here.
Got you. Compton. Okay. Cuesta. Dennis. Drotz. Glasscock. Griffith. Haynes. Hartzell. Heatherman. Hoffmans. Hulse. Jacobson. Kirchen. Kidd. Kinsey. Lilly. Long. Lynn. Melcher.
Here.
Moore. O'Malley. Oury. Pelton. Porter. Rivard.
Here.
Rodriguez Melendez. Rogers. Syed Nick. Salmon. Streetman. Strunk. Sushanik. West. Wolf. And Zacko.
Compton is here as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brady. We'll now move into our first open period. First up, we have Atabus. I don't think I need both, so I don't know if you'd have people with you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Actually, can we start on the PowerPoint? Quite sure. Okay, while he's getting that set up, I will just introduce myself briefly. My name is Daphne McNelly. I am with Adibus. Some of you might recognize me from last year. We were here to talk to you all. I know I've worked with quite a few of you all around what we do here, but I always like to start with a show of hands of anybody who knows what the Adibus is. Okay, good. Now, anybody who's ridden it, probably recently. Okay, great. We got some users. Love that. So we'll give him a second. But we're going to do an activity tonight, so don't kill me when I make you socialize with your peers. I'll preface by saying we are not here to ask you for money tonight. So that's also a good start. And everybody needs a note card. Does everybody have a note card? Okay, cool. All right, good to go. Thank you. So with me tonight is Melanie Tuttle. She's our finance director. And Ann Smith is our director. She's in the back. So if you guys have questions, all three of us might be tackling them, but we're going to go ahead and start with me. You can go next slide. Yeah. Okay, so this is just a brief history of Adibus with the university. So you can see we've had this partnership going for almost 15 years. And so we've done a lot of things during that time. You can see that we've done anything from a safe ride route, which was something that we did late into the evening that got people home from different areas of the community where you frequent late at the evening. And then we also did a lot of other systems like the APD shuttle, but that was a different thing. But right now we're kind of at our lowest service level after coming out of COVID with just the park and ride routes, and that's 3 buses. And so we'll get to that here in just a second, but that's just the brief. These are probably what you're familiar with. These are what you ride on campus, and right now these are the only things that you can ride for free. So there's 2 buses on the K route, 1 on the S route, and they run opposite of one another. And this is something that we are seeing a significant ridership increase in because this is something that you guys use a lot, especially on days when it's really cold. Next, we have our fixed routes. These run throughout the city of Manhattan. So these are the best for students to be able to access the community. So these are ways that you can get out to go grocery shopping, get to your apartment, go to Aggieville, do whatever you need to do. So those blue stars on there, those are those popular locations where students might want to frequent. These are no longer free as of this year. So last year, you might know, we pursued a student fee and we were not successful, but through that, we got to do some really interesting research that helped us kind of understand the demographics at who's riding at K-State. And so we wanted to dispel some of those popular misconceptions. First of all, being that undergraduate students make up a large majority of who's on board. It's not just graduate students, and we also have quite a few staff and faculty. So those could be anybody from sports to the people who make your Qdoba Bowl. Then with this, you also see that the international students don't make up the large population either. That's something that people think is pretty common, but realistically, it's just non-international students that are the majority. And lastly, where do people go? They are going to work, they are going to K-State or to school, and to get groceries. And then we also see the option of home. We put that in there, but most likely they were doing one of those things before they went home. So you can see that realistically, the population is using this as a survival tactic in a way. It's an intersectional need that gets people to where they need to be in order to remain a K-State student. And that brings me to the topic of equity. So equity is an issue that we face because so many people need this service. And when we look at equity, we're looking at imbalances. We're looking at people who don't have a car. We're looking at people who can't get groceries, can't afford groceries. And the big thing with this that I like to point out is that K-State is considered a food desert from major grocery stores. And so unfortunately, if you don't have a vehicle, that makes it even more complicated. And so that's where Adibus really can come in and be that lifeline for those individuals. Next, you see that it disproportionately affects populations that are already disproportionately affected. This study you see was actually done here at K-State on the routes and by a student group and professor that was here. And you can see low-income students, women, Black students, and international students are going to be most affected by the loss of the service. With that, we've seen so much demand this year with no longer having the free rides that we've created a program with the International Student Center that allows for them to apply for half fare. This is difficult for them because traditionally the paperwork requires something like a Medicaid card or your food stamps, but when they come to the United States, they don't have that documentation. So we created this program and we've already seen 27 applications in 45 days. This is the fun stuff. So if you get lost, raise your hand, just let me know. So right now, housing and dining and parking services is funding K-State, and that is just for those 3 buses on Park and Ride. That is not for any other service, and they do that at a level of $147,000. To make this make sense, we're going to run through an example, and I want to preface by saying, again, I'm not asking for this money. I just find it easiest to explain it this way. So as you can see, the want might be, let's restore free rides. Add-a-Bus comes to you and says, that's going to cost $150,000. Why do we want that money from K-State funding? It's because then we can leverage state and federal dollars. This is the equation. When we get money from K-State, we then can leverage that to get a match. And so this is how they calculate that match. And so I want you to look at these operating cost dollars. And so this is agency-wide, so those are big numbers. And this is for fiscal year 2023. Our total program costs were $3,185,000. Program income is considered fare revenue. A big solution we're always told is to use our fares to pay for our loss of income from K-State. But what we have to do is subtract our fare revenue from our costs, and then we can use the $3.1 million to ask for dollars from the federal and state government. So realistically, they reduce the amount of money that we are able to get from those entities. So what does that look like? If K-State were to give us $150,000 in funding from wherever source that might be, we would get $800,000 to be able to use towards the service. That's K-State dollars, so 100% of K-State students are benefiting. And this really only costs about $5.90 per person. Now, if we need could you go back one, sorry? If we try to get the $800,000 in fares, that would mean that 26,667 people would need to buy a 30-day pass. As you can see in the last slide, that is unattainable. We had $75,000 in fares last year, and that's 2% of our budget. Realistically, we will never get to that level of fare, and also realistically, we don't want to be at that level of fare. It's not helpful for us, and really, if you look at the other point too, if K-State's not funding it, then there's zero benefit to you as a K-Stater, and really, it just harms people by putting a barrier in front of them in cost. So at the $150,000 level, this is how much K-State would be paying into our local match, 12 cents. So even though that seems about half of that 30, realistically in our data and our research last year, K-State made up about 54% of our riders, so anybody affiliated with the university. And you're still paying for less than half of that match. And so the other part of that match comes from people like the City of Manhattan, Riley County, and our service contracts. And so realistically, what we're asking for from K-State is a really minute number in the grand scheme of things that helps our budget greater. So now I'm gonna ask you to do something fun. Okay, so this was just a touch of what we do, but I want you to go ahead and write a minimum 6-word sentence. You can go crazy if you're a writer, about what you think about transportation at K-State. Doesn't have to be in regards to Add-a-Bus. This could be scooters, sidewalks, bike ped, whatever you think. And then when you're done, get up and hand your card to 2 other people, and then try to find your group of 4 or 5, I don't know how many are in here right now, and then read your cards out and share with one another. I'll offer prompts as we go, but once you're done, start getting up and looking for your people.
For reference on the speaker's time, they have about a minute and a half left, so.
Chair Cuesta.
I won't take 15 minutes.
It has been moved and seconded and objected to extend the speaker's time by 15 minutes. That means this will go into a hand vote. All those in favor of extending the speaker's time by 15 minutes, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. That will pass. The speaker's time is extended.
Okay. Okay. So go ahead and share your cards. Be brave. Some of you writer people, maybe be quicker. Give them a minute. Yeah. I'll have you go back through and just ask it to take them from the groups. Yeah. Okay, if you've shared your card, please try to get with the group, read each other's cards, and then I'm going to ask you guys to share one. Yeah. Okay, if you guys think you're getting to a good place with sharing your cards, I'm going to ask you to put your attention on me and hold your cards in the air. You can.
If everyone could return to their seat so that our speaker can finish their speech.
You're fine. I was just going to ask if you had a card in your group that you thought was really meaningful, I would ask that 1 or 2 people volunteer to share. And this should be a card that's not your own at this point.
Chair Broughton.
Okay.
Senator Griffith. Oh, never mind. Okay.
1 or 2 more?
Coordinator Navarro.
Great.
Senator Dennis.
Great. Yeah. Good feedback, guys. So the next thing I'm going to have you do is also involved, but you don't have to talk to anybody. So you can go to the next slide, and I'm just going to give you as long as it takes you all to fill out this quick survey. So if you could get your smartphones out. And this is now your preference, or your preference as you speak for your respective parties at K-State. Yes, and then we're going to take your cards back too, so hopefully you're prepared. And it's okay if you wrote that transportation's not important. That is also an option in the survey. Okay, and that's essentially everything I have to offer. I know you guys are still working, but I just wanted to say thank you for giving us the time. We really do appreciate the partnership we have with K-State, and I will take any questions that anybody has right now.
Chair Long.
I don't have the total number right now, but the way that the survey was conducted was that we actually went out, AdaBus staff went and rode all of our routes multiple days and tallied the amount of K-State riders that boarded with ID, and then we also asked them to complete paper surveys, and I think it was around 500. Yeah.
Granted.
54%, yes, of the ridership during those days were K-State affiliated.
Are there further questions for Adibus?
I did bring ridership data if you guys want to have that. I have some printouts. We don't have to go over it now, but if you're interested in seeing how fares have affected that, I have that too. So you'd like that? Sure. Yeah, we can leave some and you guys can grab them.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Okay, next up for first open period, we have Cat's Cupboard.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Emily. I'm the president of Cat's Cupboard Ambassadors.
And I'm Hillary. I'm the vice president of Cat's Cupboard Ambassadors.
We also aren't asking for any money. We're just kind of asking you guys to communicate because I know that all of you guys are really involved. Everybody on SGA is. So we're kind of just here to ask you to ask your other commitments, or not commitments, but groups that you're involved in. Ask them to apply to volunteer at Cat's Cupboard. We're having an issue right now with having volunteers, so we had to hire a lot more staff this year, and that's taking away money from the budget that they have from the foundation to purchase food for the cupboard for students. So the more volunteers that we have, the better it is.
Yeah, we, as probably a lot of you know, we just opened up the new Cat's Cupboard. We went from, I think, 800 feet of space to 8,000. So we definitely have a lot more we're trying to maintain right now, which also makes volunteers really important. This also requires that we have a lot more food in stock. But as our budget dwindles, it's going to be kind of hard to keep it up to what it needs to be. So if we can save money any way we can, that's kind of our goal. So volunteers would be really helpful right now.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Oh, do you guys stand for questions? Coordinator Hoffman.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I know that during my volunteer time, there are usually only about 2 volunteers, and then there's about 5 staff that we have.
Granted.
I believe that the coordinators want to have around 10 people there at a time, just for checkout purposes, checking in, and then stocking.
Senator Hoffman's.
Thursdays are the busiest days because we have staff, faculty are able to shop on Thursdays, and so those are definitely biggest days.
But we accept people every day at all the times. So we're open from 10 to 6, Monday through Thursday, and then 10 to 2, Friday.
Yeah.
So any of those times we have volunteers.
Senator Haynes.
There's a link on our website. I believe it's like catscupboard.com. That's not the right website, but if you Google it, there should be a link.
Senator Zacko.
Do your volunteers volunteer on a consistent, like, scheduled basis, so they get 2 hours on Mondays or whatever every week?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You'll sign up for kind of the same time and it'll just repeat throughout the semester, but also it's flexible. I know a lot of people, if they have a busy exam week, they'll not go to their hour, and that's okay too.
Caucus Leader Salmon.
It's about a 30-minute training one time. There's also like Canvas modules, but you do that during your volunteer shift, so it's not a huge commitment.
Derek.
I don't know the number of students off the top of my head, but I do know that about $2,000 worth of product leaves the shelf every single day. So it's definitely a lot more than it was whenever we were in Fairchild.
Caucus Leader Salmon.
the past, we've gotten different grants from places like Harvesters. I know that after COVID-19, donations like that from food banks definitely dwindled because I don't really exactly know why. But I know that right now we're kind of operating off of a grant that we got, and that money is almost out. So I'm not sure what the next steps are. That's definitely something that our director definitely knows more about. Sorry.
And they have expressed that that's something that they're worried about. Because right now it looks like we have a lot and it looks like we're like sitting in a good spot. But I don't think they were expecting it to blow up as much as it has. And so even with giving people restraints on like how much they can take each day, we're still seeing kind of more go out than we can really put back in.
Congressman Salmon.
I guess if you have an influx of volunteers to Cats Covered, would you then reduce the number of staff members that exist? Is that like a goal, I guess?
I believe that is the goal.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any further first open period speakers tonight? Seeing none, we will move into approval of the minutes. The minutes were distributed on Tuesday along with the agenda and legislation tracking information. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Chair Blood. Yes. Yes, we can. Are there any further questions or corrections about the minutes? Chair Cuesta. Awesome, it has been moved and seconded. Seeing no objections, the minutes will stand approved. We will move into announcements. First, if you are interested in serving on the Elections Committee, Commissioner Saya is still seeking members for the Elections Committee this term. There are currently no applications for the Elections Committee. So if you are interested, if you are a senior who is not seeking to, run for Senate, this would be a great position for you. Or someone who is interested in either the executive or the judicial branch. This is also a good position for you. 2, the legislative advocates application is still open. Anyone interested in advocating for students in Topeka this spring is highly encouraged to apply. You go to Topeka to advocate. It is a one-day commitment. The application is due in 8 days on the 10th. If any questions, please feel free to reach out to the legislative director, Logan Cohn. The application and his email are both linked in the announcements. 3, proxies. If you're going to be absent from a student senate meeting, please fill out the link, even if you aren't sure if your absence will be excused. 4, if you'll be physically absent from student senate but would still like to attend via Zoom, please fill out the student senator's Zoom request form. 5, if you want to give props to someone in student senate, fill out the Senate shout-out form, and Speaker Pro Tem Kappelman will read them at the end of our meeting. 6, SGA Member of the Week is Cooper Potterf. He asked great questions during the 12-hour-long Student Allocations Committee meeting this week. Thank you so much for your dedication and contributions, Cooper. The upcoming events calendar has all of the committee meetings, and the quote of the week is, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act, the rest is merely tenacity." Amelia Earhart. We will now move into approval of appointments. We have Resolution 232442. Is there a motion to consider? Senator Glasscock. Will the author please come forward?
Resolution 232442, approval of new student senators. Authors Brian Blood, sponsors the Senate Operations Committee. Whereas there are currently 2 vacancies for the position of student senator for the College of Business Administration. Whereas the list of eligible and willing candidates in the 2023 SGA general election in the College of Business Administration has been exhausted. And whereas the Dean Student Advisory Council, in their capacity to fill the vacancies, has nominated Delaney Hundley and Jacob Mason to fill the vacancies. Be it resolved that Section 1, the following individuals be approved as student senators for the College of Business Administration: Delaney Hundley and Jacob Mason.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 42? Chair Lynn. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any objections? Seeing none, it will stand approved, and you all can come get sworn in. If there's anyone else here who hasn't been sworn in yet, you can also come down to get sworn in. Okay, I'm gonna have you raise your right hand and say "I will" at the end. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of student senator and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association. Okay, I'm gonna have you all introduce yourselves. Name, pronouns, major, hometown, favorite smell.
Hi everyone, I'm Jacob Mason. My pronouns are he, him. I'm majoring in accounting. I'm from Manhattan, and my favorite smell is the smell of my grandma. She smelled like coffee, hairspray, and tamarind cigarettes.
And my name is Delaney Hundley. I'm majoring in organizational management. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from Wathena, Kansas, and my favorite smell is vanilla.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing as we have exhausted approval of appointments, we will move into committee reports. Are there any committee chairs that would like to give a report tonight? Seeing none, we will move into directors' reports. Are there any directors that would like to give a report tonight? Also seeing none, we will move into approval of the allocations. Chair Cuesta. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the allocations will stand approved. Senator Saya.
I move to discharge Bill 32 from the Senate Operations Committee. I object.
Okay, it has been moved, seconded, and objected to discharge, what was the bill number?
32.
Bill 32 from the Senate Operations Committee. Since it has been moved, since it has been objected, we will go into a hand vote on the motion to discharge. Yes. It is a debatable motion, but since it was objected,
I object to the consideration, so we're just going to vote on whether we talk about it.
yeah, so we're going to debate on whether we consider the motion, and then the motion itself will be debated because of the objection. So, yes, Caucus Leader Kidd. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what's happening right now is there is a bill that is within the Senate Operations Committee that has been moved to be discharged. Caucus Leader Porter is, so discharged means that we want to consider it on the floor because it was not sent to the floor originally. Typically, when bills are referred out, they are sent back with a referral of either positive, negative, or just referred. This bill was not referred out, and so Senator Saya is asking that it be discharged so that we can hear it on the floor. Caucus Leader Porter has objected to this being considered. So we will take a hand vote on whether or not to talk about whether or not we will discharge it. Chair Long. Voting yes means that you would like to debate whether or not we should discharge it. Voting no means you would not like to talk about whether or not we are going to discharge it. Are there any further points of information on that? Chair Cuesta. It is a hand vote. All in favor, raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. Okay, so we are now going to be considering the motion to discharge from the committee. That motion is debatable. Senator Saya, you have first rights to debate.
All right, thanks everybody. I think we all are on the same page about what the motion to discharge does. But here's a little bit of background on this. Last week, I introduced to you all a piece of legislation that's going to trim down the amount of time that we can give to open period speakers. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree. But that piece of legislation was sent to the Senate Operations Committee to pass their opinion on whether or not it was a good or bad piece of legislation. And rather than deciding that, they chose to hold it in committee and not ever make a decision or recommendation on the legislation. So what that means is that the 5 people on that committee at the time made up their minds for the entirety of this room. I'm not asking you to vote for the bill yet. Believe me, I will. All I'm asking you to do is bring it to the floor so that we can make a decision rather than the Senate Operations Committee. It's really that simple. We should have a debate.
Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there a debate in the negative? Caucus Leader Porter.
Okay. A previous speaker made a point about the fact that the Senate Operations Committee didn't decide to make a recommendation on Bill 32, which is absolutely correct. I don't understand why committees are suddenly not allowed to postpone pieces of legislation indefinitely, because this has always been a power that has been in the hands of a committee. If a committee decides that they don't want to spend the time in a committee debating the legislation and that they don't think it should go back to the floor for any reason, they have always been empowered to postpone legislation indefinitely. And if we want to have a debate about whether or not that is something that committees should be allowed to do, I'm all for that. I would encourage someone to introduce legislation disallowing committees from postponing legislation indefinitely. But that's not what tonight's debate is about. Tonight's debate is about whether or not to discharge from the committee, not a value statement about whether or not we should have postponed indefinitely. I would also point out that per the Robert's Rules of Order, description of what the motion to discharge a committee is allowed to do, or like when you're allowed to discharge from a committee, it says that can only be applied to any main motion is legislation, or any other matter that has been referred to a committee and that the committee has not yet finally reported to the assembly. All of the subsidiary motions can be applied to it. I would argue that by taking a definitive final action in committee, even if that was to hold in the committee, that the Senate Operations Committee has made its final report to the assembly regarding Bill 32 and that this motion isn't even in order. Thank you.
Chair Blood? Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? Chair Blood?
I agree. I'm actually one of the biggest proponents of committees holding legislation that they don't like. However, I also know that each and every one of us here in this body have the ability to then discharge it. And I find that this bill specifically has a lot of value to be discussed here, as it affects each and every one of all of our time. And we'll get into the merits of the bill later. But you know, just as a committee has the right to hold a piece of legislation, the body has the right to discharge. In talking about whether this motion's in order, a little interesting thing on a committee report from our statutes, Chapter 02, Section 207, subsection E, the legislation will be returned to the Student Senate for final action unless held by a majority vote of the committee. That happened. Point 1, each committee shall report the legislation with a recommendation that it either be passed or not passed or without recommendation. So a motion to hold or postpone is thereby not a report based upon the definition of our governing documents. And as well, until this debate, of which none of that is a formal report to this body, no one knew officially, formally to this body, that it was postponed indefinitely, thereby also not being a final report of the committee. And so therefore, perfectly in order. And so I ask that all of you then have the ability to vote on this bill today, discuss it. Let's discuss it on its merits here within Senate and not just hold it in committee, let something that affects each and every one of us individually in terms of our time and our experience in Senate be held by a 3-2 vote of the 5 people within the committee as well.
Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is that a point of order? Yes. I have a feeling you will get that in debate, and one of the three debated is a previous person who debated. If any of the people that did vote to postpone indefinitely would like to go explain it to Senator Oury, you can also do that. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there further debate in the negative? Senator Griffith.
The reason we decided to hold this bill in committee is because we didn't view it as good. In fact, we viewed it as so not good, we thought that there was no reason to even bring it to Senate. That was our final ruling, and as such, the opinion of the committee is that it is not worth discussion, hence why it was not referred at all. I initially started with a motion to send it back disfavorably, but then we decided, surely in a vote of 3-2, myself included, to table it indefinitely in our committee because we didn't view it as important.
Thank you. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? Chair Long.
I, unlike some, am not a man who loves to cite statutes and bylaws and subsections to make points and arguments because I do not feel they're effective to me. Here's what I do know. The fact that 3 people, according to the previous speaker, did not feel it was important or worth discussion should not decide the opinion of this body and does not accurately reflect what I would assume at least more than 3 of us may have on the opinion. I would also point out that all previous negative speakers were member of the 3 people that voted to not have it heard. I think that's indicative of the potential of what this is going to look like.
Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there further debate in the negative? Seeing none, is there further debate in the positive? Is there any further debate at all? Okay, we will move into a hand vote on the motion to discharge. A yes vote on the motion to discharge will bring this bill into final action, where we will have the ability to debate on the merits of the bill, and a no vote will leave the committee's decision to postpone indefinitely as the final decision, and we will not see the bill again in Senate. All those in favor, raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that will pass. We will now move into final action on the bill. Will the author please come forward? Coordinator Hoffman. Is it?
No, actually. Yeah, I've got.
Chair Long. Okay, it has been moved and seconded for a 2-minute recess. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we will move into a 2-minute recess and we will get that sent out. Back at 7:46. Okay, our 2-minute recess was indeed brief. We are now back. Will the author please come forward? Everyone should have that bill. Hey guys, we are back.
All right, so changes first. Before the Senate Operations Committee decided that my bill was too terrible to even think about, they did make changes that I recommended based on feedback I received last week in introduction. That is to clarify, given the maximum amount of time you can make for an extension, how many times you can make that extension. So the bill right now says for speaking time, you can extend it once for 2 minutes, and for questioning time, you can extend it once for 1 minute. That's the bill.
Were any other changes made? Seeing none, you have first rights to debate.
Thank you very much. So I'm glad that we can finally get to debate on this bill. My argument here is really pretty simple. I've sat through 10 or 12 or however many sessions this term and sessions in terms before that, and watched open period run until 7:30, run until 7:45, run even until 8 o'clock. I gain a lot of value from the people that come here to talk during open period. I've learned interesting things that I, never would have found out on my own. People come to this room that I have no connection to, and I really appreciate that. But honestly, hearing from those speakers is not what our primary purpose is. And I wrote this bill because I want to be done getting stuck at 7:30 or 7:45 or 8 o'clock at night, just moving on to our actual business. It takes a lot to be a senator. In fact, debate I gave last week was all about how we should protect the responsibilities of senators because we're asking them for a lot, so they should have certain powers for their job. To be fair, we should also trim out parts of our job that are wasteful if we're going to be honest about what is and is not right to make this job popular. So this bill returns extensions of time to what they're supposed to be, which is an opportunity for any speaker to wrap up. If they're speaking, they've got 10 minutes, 2 minutes is more than enough time to finalize their points because they know in advance that the 10 minutes is what they're offered. That's their time limit. And for questions, I really wasn't interested in providing a bunch of new questions to the speaker, because you all know how long questions can run out. I want just enough time to wrap up that conversation. What I see here is the opportunity to make open period what it should be and move on with the rest of our agenda. For that reason, I think you should vote yes.
Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there debate in the negative? Caucus Leader Porter. Yes.
So for the offer, would that just be one time overall for all senators?
Yes.
So I think a previous speaker mentioned that our primary purpose is not to listen to open period, which I agree with. That's obviously not why we're here. But I do think one of our primary purposes is to be an informed, deliberative body. If we're making decisions that affect the entire student body, we should have the maximum amount of information that we can have when we're making those decisions. And in order to do that, we need to have people come talk to us as senators, as cabinet directors, as student body presidents, et cetera. And so I think that limiting them to a maximum of 12 minutes for speaking and a maximum of 6 minutes for questions is completely antithetical to the idea that we are making decisions that affect the entire student body. Because if we're limiting the amount of information that we can take in before we make those decisions, it completely defeats the purpose of even having someone come to open period at all. I think that part of the issue that we're seeing is that there's so many people coming for first open period that we're just having it drag on for a long, long time. But you have all been here for the same number of open period speeches that I have, and you've seen the number of times the speaker's time has been extended, especially for questions, because people always have questions, and I don't think that it's necessarily the best idea to be silencing people that have genuine questions, because there's an argument to be made about, oh, follow up with me via email, but when that follow-up happens, that person that reaches out is the only person that gets the answer to that question. But if the speaker is answering the question in front of all of Student Senate like Adibus did tonight, then every student senator present is getting to hear that information and getting to understand what the question was and what the response from the speaker was. So I don't think that we should be inviting people to speak in front of Student Senate, telling them they have 10 minutes, and then telling them, oh, you have 2 more minutes, and if they have 3 or 4 more slides, they're just completely out of luck. Like you have given presentations to your classes, you've spoken in front of large groups, you know that it's not always possible or super easy to keep yourself limited to an exact amount of time, especially if you're just coming up here giving a presentation that you, like if you design the PowerPoint Thursday at 5 p.m. and then you come give the PowerPoint Thursday at 7 p.m., you didn't necessarily have a ton of time to practice. So I think that we need to give people the benefit of the doubt and allow them to have the amount of time that they need, whether that's 10 minutes, whether that's 15 minutes. You saw tonight a motion to extend the speaker's time by 15 minutes passed. So clearly there is an appetite for people to be able to have an extended amount of time to speak in front of Student Senate. So I don't think that there is any reason that we need to be inviting people and then cutting them off at exactly 12 minutes. I think that it completely defeats the purpose of bringing speakers. And if we're gonna pass this legislation, then I would just pass legislation to get rid of first open period, because I think it's completely antithetical to the point of having an open forum for people that aren't in Student Senate to come talk to us. Vote no.
Thank you. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, I'm seeking debate in the positive. Is there a question of privilege?
Yes, yeah. So, and this is actually for you, Madam Speaker. As the chair of our meeting, you have the right to not recognize people whenever you want, correct?
So, not technically. According to our bylaws, under first open period, it says that I am to recognize anyone that wishes to be recognized.
Thank you.
Yeah. I am seeking debate in the positive. Chair Blood.
I find a few things important to look at here, right? One, we're given a time to people when we invite them, at least, of how long they can speak. And I've sat here multiple times, as a previous speaker even mentioned, times where someone might have 3, 4 more slides and, is not within that 10 minutes. I have a number of classes I know where I would lose like points even, right? I'd be penalized as a student, as a presenter for going over time. I know numerous other students and faculty who have to present at conferences, have to present at larger publications who have very limited time and are not allowed to continue afterwards. And I find it almost an area of respect for everyone in this body, right? We should obviously respect anyone who comes up and decides to speak in front of us, right? Give them our attention. It's why we close our laptops, to give them our full undivided attention as student representatives. And we should also be receiving that respect in kind, right? And so, of course, you know, time limits are fuzzy, and we should allow for some time to finish a thought, right? Finish what we're doing right now. But if there's 3 or 4 more slides left, well, maybe that person has to come back should come back the next week if they find those points and those values really, really, really important to get through to all of you as senators. Otherwise, they should make those 10, maybe 12 minutes the most impactful delivering to you. Also, when you limit that time, we now have a little bit more of an appetite for maybe some more speakers, right? A lot of times we invite speakers directly, but speakers for first open period don't have to be invited. But when someone's time has been extended 10 minutes and then 10 minutes again, and then goes through 5 minutes of questions and 10 minutes of questions and 7 minutes of questions, do you really want to have to speak again after all of that has gone on? Do you really think you're going to get the full attention of all of you in the room? So instead, you can look at your time, you can make sure everyone's respectful, and we can bring more people in who don't have speaking rights to address us on issues that matter to them. And that is much more important for this body to consider. And in terms of questions, again, you can respond via email, and we have a second open period that if that was really important to you, you as a senator can then bring that response. Hey, remember that first open period speech? I had another question. I followed up. Here's what they said, and address the body there. And I find that to be the use of all of our time to more economize the time and allow everyone in the room to have that ability to share and speak their mind in the areas that they have that ability to do so. So I strongly urge you to vote yes, provide those guardrails on the timelines here.
Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there further debate in the negative? Coordinator Hoffman?
Yeah, what's up, guys? All right, so the open period speaker, I believe is an opportunity for the greater Kansas State community and all of Manhattan community to engage with student government. What I love about open period speakers is their diverse backgrounds. Today we heard from Adibus, CATS ambassadors. We also heard IMBAF come speak to us. I don't know if this was last semester or not. But there's a lot of different people that come to speak to us, and that's because they value our opinions. We are the leaders of student government. As I believe, as I'm sure that most here do, one of the SGA's goals in the future is increase the involvement from students across campus. I believe open period speakers can be an opportunity to increase that involvement. In my time here, I haven't seen people utilize open period speakers, but I believe that should change. Open period speakers provide an opportunity for all of campus to engage with SGA. And by increasing students' awareness of the opportunity of the information that they provide to us, which I believe is very valuable across a wide sector of items, I think it can in turn let students believe SGA is I lost my train of thought, but I think open period speakers are good and will increase community involvement and student involvement in SGA. And I believe that by limiting their time to speak will decrease that possible engagement.
Thank you. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? Chair Long.
I actually agree with the majority of points made by the previous speaker. First open period should be driven towards the Greater Manhattan and Kansas State University community, and we should have as many diverse voices as possible in that time period. My concern and issue with my time here, that's not what it currently is. We reserve that time, that opportunity, for people that bring in a PowerPoint presentation and who, well, we like to have long conversations with. The chief of staff, the Corey Williamson with the union, Ethan Erickson talking about budget debate. We save that period for large, I don't want to say important, but relatively important to our decision-making items. We don't save it for community-based things that people might have just their average day-to-day updates for us. My desire to have this bill pass is because what open period used to be, previously back to the original 2000s and prior, first open period lasted for nearly an hour every single meeting. I'm not suggesting that. However, what it was 10 or so groups, clubs, organizations, Atwood and Cats Covered file into that would come and speak on whatever issues were facing them at that time. And they would talk for short periods of time and give exactly what they were working on and what they may need as representation. And it would give us the ability to have not just an understanding of what the budget looks like or what the union is up to and view presentations, ask questions, but have a broader understanding of the greater K-State community, because knowing that they would speak for shorter periods of time, the pro tem at that point, or whatever the role of the pro tem, it was the secretary of Senate, whatever it was, would ask more of them to come. It's more of an open invite, an open forum, which someone mentioned. We should have that, an opportunity where more than people can come, even if we don't specifically invite them to. People can come and say, I want to be recognized, tell you what I'm doing right now. And us, we know, I know, I've been here for 4 years. By the time 8 o'clock rolls around, a first open period, the attention in the room is falling rapidly. We need to make sure we're giving everybody that's speaking the full respect of time, and changing those speakers, having shortened times on that, will definitely reinforce that as well.
Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there further debate in the negative? Senator Griffith.
Informed, to impart information or knowledge. Merriam-Webster. That is what we as a student body, as our student senate, should be. Informed. And that is exactly what first open period is for. How a previous speaker has mentioned that it is for PowerPoint presentations. I say, yeah, that is one of the easiest ways to inform someone of information. How would we know the struggles that Adibus is currently going through if they were limited to 10 minutes, +2? If they were limited to answering 5 minutes worth of questions, +1 to finish whatever the last one was asked? How can we claim to be informed, claim to make informed decisions about what we, as the Student Senate, and what our student body really wants without the knowledge first open period presents? This bill would significantly damage that ability. Our open period speakers would not be able to fully express everything that they feel that we need to know, that we then use to be informed in our debates, in our discussions, and in our daily lives. So I urge you to vote against this, because voting for it would cut down a significant amount of how we, as our Student Senate, remain informed. And so if you're for that, then you can vote for it. But I, for one, would like to be informed.
Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? Senator Glasscock.
Yeah, I think that the open period time is a way for us to connect ourselves with the many groups and much like information that organizations on campus and throughout the community have, right? And I think about the times that I have questions for people who come here to speak, and times where I want additional information. And I think, what are ways that I could do that outside of asking a question and extending the time? And I think that sending an email or contacting them after the meeting time allows for us as senators to connect directly with the organizations and groups that we're most passionate about and that we think would better serve the interests that we're fighting for in Senate. And so I think that reducing the amount of time and saving the big hitting questions during that speaker's questioning time and having the separate questions that are, hey, I have interest about this, or I want to contact you about such and such, allows for us as senators to succinctly work with these organizations and these people and these groups that we really want to connect with and really want to organize with. And kind of having that forceful shove in that position, I think would make us as senators more involved and more active in what we want to do on campus. So I hope that you vote yes on this bill.
Thank you. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there further debate in the negative? Chair Sushanik. Do you have a question of privilege?
So this is another question for you. Really fast, as we go through the debate, can you describe for the body how 90% of our open period speakers are scheduled as of right now?
Yes. So 90% of our open period speakers are either reached out to by the speaker pro tem or the speaker pro tem, or they reach out to him. Either they reach out to him or he reached out to them. Yes.
So in those conversations, what happens with like choosing dates? Like, so do y'all intentionally have a lot of people come on certain dates, or do you guys try and space it out, or what is that?
We try to space them out. We have a limit of 2 per at the moment. Yes.
Generally, I agree with the mission that this bill is trying to accomplish, things that a previous speaker said about having respect going both ways, using our time in the most useful way possible. But I have some very specific concerns about the bill. I think that we need to allow for an appropriate amount of questions. I would that we could make this bill have a longer time for extending questions than the 1 minute as it currently stands. I think often it's very hard to get called on, and you may have a question that you think is really valuable and you've been raising your placard time and time again, but you haven't quite gotten called on yet. And I think the 1 minute constraint on questioning extensions now doesn't allow for one more question to be asked. It allows just for the speaker to finish the thought that they're currently on, and then that's it. And there could be a senator that has a very valuable question and they just want that one more quick answer or that one little question of privilege there.
Thank you. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? Chair Cuesta. Okay, will you get that pulled up? Yes.
Sorry. So if this is the amendment, some of it's not like grammatically correct. So like, is this when you fix it, or do I have to then wait and then move another from the amendment for you to fix that stuff? It should be like 4 minutes, like plural, but it's only 4 minutes.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
We will take that as a friendly amendment to the amendment. We will take that as a different amendment if this passes.
Sure.
Yes. So we're going to have Chair Cuesta state the amendment and then see if there is a second to the amendment.
Maybe. Okay. Basically, what the amendment is doing is changing the amount of guaranteed questioning time and questioning time that can be moved and extended by this body from 5 minutes to 4 minutes on the guaranteed questioning period, and from, I believe it's 2 minutes to 4 minutes on the extendable questioning, 1 minute to 4 minutes, thank you. Therefore, bringing the total speaker's time to 20 minutes.
Okay, is there a second on this amendment? Okay, this amendment has been moved and seconded.
Do I have first rights to debate?
You do.
Fantastic. After hearing concerns from both people
for this bill and people against this bill. I think that this is a pretty reasonable compromise. People's concerns who are against the bill is that we are not respecting presenters' time, only allowing them to have 12 minutes total. So I think that this is a pretty reasonable compromise, extending that to 20 minutes to allow speakers to not only finish their thought, but maybe bring up something that they had forgotten in their presentation as well. So I would encourage you to be in favor of this amendment and then ultimately be in favor of the bill as amended. Thank you.
Okay, seeing as that was debate in the positive on the amendment, is there debate in negative on the amendment? Is there further debate in the positive on the amendment? And is Senator Saya?
Okay, so I've had time to think about the topic of questions, in particular because of conversations that I had with the pro tem about open period in general and how we schedule this outside of time, about concerns, questions specifically. And I'll be honest with you, I still want time to be limited for questions, because I feel like we extend it 2 or 3 or 4 times and things get really out of hand until we start talking about the provost's music taste. But I feel like this offers a very reasonable compromise. In particular, I like that it scales down the original question time as well as the extension, or as well as scaling the extension, because it means that we can ask not very many questions if that's the flavor of the room. And if we have a lot of questions, as we sometimes do, that do provide value to this room, we can double the questioning time. I think, like speakers on the negative had mentioned, this allows for us to dig into a speaker when that opportunity is really warranted. And all in all, it's 8 minutes total time, if you include the extension, versus the 6 minutes that I originally proposed. That's a super small compromise to make. I'm happy with it.
Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the amendment, is there further debate in the negative? Is there further debate in the positive on the amendment? Chair Suchanek.
I was hoping that we might get an amendment that made this 3 minutes, but 4 minutes works great. I think that that is a very appropriate amount of time. They already know the time constraints that they're being given before they start speaking. They know it well in advance while they're prepping for their presentation. And I think that the questions are really the more valuable part of this, that time where we get to interact with the people who are in positions of leadership or in positions of organizations that we're passionate about. I think that's really a big perk of being senator, that you get to have that face-to-face time with people in positions of power across the university and throughout the community, and that getting to ask them those questions is a certain privilege that regular members of the student body who don't serve in Student Governing Association do not get, and this really honors that.
Thank you. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there debate in the negative on the amendment? Is there further debate in the positive on the amendment? And is there any further debate at all? Seeing none, we will move into a hand vote on the amendment itself. If you are in favor of this amendment to the original resolution, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. Okay, seeing that, the amendment will be adopted. We will now move back into, yes, Chair Long. 4. So we need 1 more positive and 1 more negative for previous question to be in order. We will now proceed into debate in the positive on the resolution as amended, or the bill as amended. Is there further debate in the positive? Chair Long.
I think Adibus was a quintessential and perfect example of first open period speaker. Something that I don't interact with often, but is around me, and I may be called on to at least offer my opinion or decision on. They presented a lot of very quality information within their 10 minutes, and then we extended it. Do you think that the extended amount of time assisted in your understanding of the speaker and would further inform your decisions being made? And did you catch what happened up here? Currently, we have an unofficial limit to 2 open period speakers a Senate. I didn't know about that. I would certainly like that to change.
I would like to clarify that it is not an official or an unofficial limit. It is just up to the discretion of the pro tem as is in their job description. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there any further debate in the negative? Is there any further debate in the positive? Is there any further debate at all? Seeing none, we will move into a roll call vote.
All right. Atchison. Bellamy. Yes, by proxy. Biggs. Blood. Yes. Broughton. Yes. Cup. Koch. Bruckner.
Yes.
Koch.
Yes.
Compton.
Yes.
Cuesta.
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Drotz. Dunce. Fogel.
Yes, by proxy.
Glasscock.
Gotta be quiet for a minute.
Griffith.
No.
Haynes. Hartzell. Heatherman. Hoffmans. Hulse. Hunley. Jacobson. Kirchin.
No.
Kidd. Kermer. Kinsey. Lilly. Long. Lynn. Mason. Melcher.
Pass.
Moore. O'Malley. Oury. Pelton. Peterson. Porter. Rios. Rivard.
Yes.
Rodriguez Melendez. Rogers. Syed Carly. Syed Nick. Salmon. Streetman. Strunk. Sushanik. West. Winger. Wolf. Zatko. All right, going back to passes. Dunce. Hartzell. Kidd.
No.
Kinsey. Melcher.
No.
Moore. Rios. Rodriguez Melendez. And Winger.
No by proxy.
All right. Bill 23-2432 will pass on a vote of 37 to 8 to 1.
Okay, seeing as we have exhausted final action, we will move into introduction of legislation. First, we have Bill 23-2433, amendments to the KSU SGA Constitution to establish speaking rights. Will the author please come forward? Is there a motion to consider?
So moved. Second.
There you go.
All right, thanks everybody. I'll stop talking eventually. this is a follow-up to my debate on the judicial speaking rights legislation from last week. I am very sympathetic to the idea that members of the judiciary should be allowed to provide their perspective to this room. I feel very strongly that the activity of debating is what it means to be a senator, debating and voting. So this legislation is what I think is an acceptable compromise to that point of view. Senators and chairs of Senate committees are allowed to debate legislation. That's their job. Everyone else in our organization, advisors, members of the executive branch, members of the judicial branch, and presidents of outside organizations, all people that we want to hear the perspective from, have speaking rights, just not debating rights. This legislation also seeks to organize the system that we have. Something that the author of the last bill actually talked about was that we don't define what speaking rights are anywhere, and we don't define what debating rights are anywhere. We use privileges in some places, rights in some places. It's really all over the place. So this enshrines in our Constitution what rights are, and it says who has them. And then in the Student Senate standing rules, it says who can, at any given point in the agenda, on debate, on reports, on open period, what caliber of rights can speak at that time. I think that this is an organized way to present the information, makes it super clear for people inside and outside of our organization, and protects the job of being senator, while at the same time giving people who aren't in Senate an opportunity to share their perspective. Oh, I was supposed to be reading this. That's what I think about the bill. Whereas...
That's the same thing as allowing the author to summarize, but that's how it's written in the statutes. Dismiss with the introductory reading.
Please.
So is there, this is a motion to allow the author to summarize, pretty much. So it has been moved, seconded, and objected. So all those in favor of allowing the author to summarize, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. You may summarize.
Thanks, I'm done.
Are there questions or corrections for the author? Senator Gott.
Yeah, so that's in relation to deferring rights. First of all, I think it's silly to have a list that only has 1 point on the list. Second, the ability to defer rights is itself a right. So it should be articulated in the Constitution where we articulate the rights, not as a Senate rule.
Are there further questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, thank you. We will now move to Bill 232434. Chair Long. Will the author please come forward again? Caucus Leader Porter. We will now go into a hand vote. All up in favor of allowing the author to summarize, raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. You may summarize.
It's the same thing. Don't vote for one of them. They are not compatible alone. Like, we have to pass both for them to make sense. That's it.
Is it a question for the author?
About the operations of the bill passage.
Yes.
What would happen if, say, the amendment to the statute passes, but then the amendment to the Constitution passes Senate, but doesn't get the required support from the Caucus? What happens
Then
then?
it would be dealt with in the Committee on Governing Doc. Yeah. In all reality, that is probably what would happen. Chair Broughton.
That's a great question. That is what the Senate operations team decided was the best way to move forward with these pieces of legislation.
The pieces of legislation have different thresholds for being passed, so they have to be passed as separate bills. As the one that is a constitutional amendment has to go to the college caucuses to be ratified, and the statutes change does not. Are there further questions, Chair Long? I think that they have to be separate, and I think that they've been separate in previous instances where we did have constitutional amendments 2 years ago. Yes. Are there further questions or corrections for the author? Senator Lilly.
Yeah, that's a really smart suggestion.
Yeah, I will. Caucus Leader Porter, you are shaking your head. I don't see why we couldn't. I'm going to say that probably yes, we can, but that is something that will get handled when it is referred. Are there further questions or corrections for the author? President Stout.
Under which category would we asking this question fall?
You would be granted speaking rights by this legislation. I'm not sure what portion of the agenda introduction of legislation counts under. In fact, I'm not sure that we don't have consideration as a separate part of the Senate standing rules, right? We've got debate, we have open period, we have reports. We don't have consideration. So that's a really great question. I feel like that's something that committee should iron out.
President Stout, your question being asked is not debate. Therefore, the way it currently reads, I would rule it as speaking rights. Are there further questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, Caucus Leader Porter.
Questions of privilege are considered privileged motions. So when you ask a question of privilege, you're making a motion. How does the legislation deal with motion?
So right now, this legislation doesn't change who has the right to make motions. The only section in all of our code says that senators have the right to debate, to vote, and make motions. No other office is granted that right. Now, I think that making motions and like operating in Senate, making amendments and previous question, all that seems like a responsibility of senators. It feels rational and reasonable that people who are not senators are able to ask questions. So I'm not sure yet how that should be ironed out, but right now, no one but senators has the right to make motions.
Are there further questions or corrections? Chief of Staff Brown.
Just wondering, so just so I'm perfectly clear on this bill removes the rights of student board presidents from debate.
That's correct.
Are there further questions or corrections? Seeing none, thank you. We will now move on to Bill 232435, amendments to the KSU SGA statutes to the Intercultural Leadership Council Charter. Is there a motion to consider? Chair Lynn. It's been moved and seconded. Will the author please come forward? Is there a motion to allow the author to summarize? It has been moved, seconded, and objected for the author to summarize. All those in favor of summarization, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. You may summarize.
Thank you. So apparently, I talked about this bill last week in my director's report. We made a lot of changes to the ILC. The most important one, in my opinion, making the Multicultural Affairs Director the permanent co-chair, because it has been like that in as far as I can remember. On top of that, since the Multicultural Affairs Director became a vacant position, we then appointed the DIB chair from SGA just to increase the representation and really hit all corners of campus. And that is the main reason why ILC was formed in the first place, to address the disconnect, make sure everybody's talked to, make sure everybody's heard. And in years past, it hasn't been utilized to its max capacity. So the ILC is making these changes in order to address that and make the ILC more resilient to time. Another, I guess, big change, in my opinion, was the ILC meets with the president and the provost. It used to be twice a semester, but we decreased that to 1 because you meet with them and you would meet them like 3 weeks later or something. So you really didn't get much done in those meetings. There's a couple other changes, but those really just pertain to like name changes, like the DMSA becoming the Office of Belonging and Inclusion, Spectrum Center. It used to be the LGBTQ Resource Center. Just a lot of nomenclature changes.
Some other questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
Grab your name tent. We will now move to Bill 232436, decrease of the Collegian Media Group Student Services Fee Agreement. Is there a motion to consider? It has been moved and seconded. The author, may you please come forward?
I'm going to read the whereas clause. Would someone mind allowing me to summarize it? I'll read the contract language to you all.
Senator Saya. Seeing no objection, you may summarize.
Okay. Decrease of the Collegiate Media Group Student Services Fee Agreement, authors myself, sponsor Student Services Fee Committee. Whereas Student Services Fee Committee reviewed the request of Student Publications, Inc., DBA, Collegiate Media Group, CMG, during the scheduled 3-year review cycle. Whereas CMG provides a variety of resources to Kansas State University students, including the Collegian, the Royal Purple Yearbook, and the Manhattan Magazine. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee is committed to the financial well-being of the student services fee and maximizing the value provided to students. Whereas Kansas State University and the Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSUSGA, have begun to reallocate financial resources to prioritize student health and well-being. Whereas CMG presented on the impacts of a 3% increase, a 0% continuance, and a 3% decrease. Whereas to better align with the student services fee budget with the state values of Student Services Fee Committee and KSUSGA, it was determined that a decrease to the CMG budget was necessary. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee identified the following areas for CMG to potentially reduce its costs: printing for the Collegian, travel and student development, the Manhattan Guide. Whereas CMG currently prevents 4,750 copies of the Collegian per issue for 27 issues a year, resulting in 128,250 copies printed per year. Whereas CMG data indicates an average pickup rate of 68%, which leaves over 40,000 excess copies per year. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee believes that CMG's travel expense should mirror other campus entities receiving student services fee monies. Whereas Student Services Fee Committee believes that the Manhattan Guide does not provide a unique service to students. Whereas, based upon the information reviewed by the Student Service Fee Committee, it was concluded that a tiered reduction totaling 8.37% was best for student value and cost savings while maintaining flexibility for CMG. Whereas the Student Service Fee Committee believes that the academic value provided to students employed by CMG warrants substantially more support from the A.Q. Miller School of Media and Communications and the College of Arts and Sciences. And whereas the Student Service Fee Committee voted 7-0 to recommend the following Student Service Fee Agreement to the Student Senate. Be it enacted that Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSUSGA, approves the following Student Service Fee Budget Agreement. The Student Services Fee Budget Agreement shall be included and/or replace the appropriate chapter of the KSU SGA statutes. The budget itself, next year, FY25, $329,000. FY26, $320 and $200, and FY27, $315,200. That is the only contract change. Nothing else has changed there.
Are there questions or corrections for the author? Chair Broughton.
So in year one, we're going to do a certain percentage, an additional different percentage in year two, and an additional percentage in year three. So instead of just a flat, we're gonna decrease it by, in this case, it'll wind up being $28,200. We're gonna do $15,000 in year one, $8,800 in year two, and $5,000 in year three.
Granted.
Probably not me. No, this is the standard way that contracts get laid out for the next 3 years going.
Chair Blood.
24, 23, 24, 26, or 36, please. Mm-hmm.
Are there further questions or corrections for the author? Senator Glasscock.
It pays for approximately 40% of their director's, 50% of their director's salary. That's it, though. The collegiate operations are not subsidized in any way besides their leadership salary. Their director's salary, not student leadership. It is not subsidized in any way by the School of Journalism or College of Arts and Sciences.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't pay like half the salary as collegiate director. They pay his A.Q. Miller professor salary, and the student services fee pays his collegiate director.
Yeah, it's about 50,000 of it comes out of our budget.
Are there further questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, we will move on to Bill 23-2437, fiscal year 2025 allocation of sports club funds. Is there a motion to consider? Chair Cuesta. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any objections? May the author please come forward. Senator Strunk. It has been moved, seconded, and objected. Those who would like the author to be allowed to summarize, please raise your placards now. All opposed, same sign. You may summarize.
Thank you. I will read some of the whereas clauses, but I won't go through the.
Will you read the amounts?
Say again?
Will you read the amounts?
Yeah. Do you want me to? Sure. Okay. Authors Carson S. Cuesta and sponsors the Student Allocations Committee. Whereas the Student Allocations Committee received and reviewed the budget request of sports clubs below on October 29, 2023, whereas all registered sports clubs were given ample opportunity and notification of their ability to submit sports club funding requests, whereas the application for the request of fiscal year sports club funding was due at 11:59 p.m. on October the 27th, 2023, Whereas 19 of the possible 19 requesting clubs presented budget proposals to the Student Allocations Committee, whereas a total of $277,758.80 was requested by organizations, equaling 424.26% of the total budget to allocate. Whereas Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSU SGA Statute 22, Section 0102, subsection B, paragraph 3 enumerates that allocations will be determined based upon activities attended and demonstrated need, whereas Chapter 51 of the KSU SGA statute states that $65,470 shall be dispersed to sports clubs on a yearly basis, whereas Chapter 51 of the KSU SGA statutes also stipulates that funds in the sports club reserve account, NISA Sports Club RSV, shall only be allocated to clubs attending a qualified national competition or to new clubs, whereas all funds must be used per funding guidelines and have been allocated accordingly, whereas funds requested by these groups and the funding recommendations made are as follows. The Badminton Club requested $400 and was recommended $400. The Bowling Club requested $36,250 and was recommended $3,450. Club Baseball requested $12,500 and was recommended $3,500. Club Softball was requested $4,770 and was recommended $2,000. Crew requested $53,183.80 and was recommended $4,000. Disc Golf Club was requested $13,660 and recommended $960. Esports Club requested $9,430 and was recommended $3,500. The IHSA Equestrian Club Team requested $44,585 and was recommended $5,400. Men's Club Soccer requested $6,840 and was recommended $4,170. Men's Lacrosse Club at KSU requested $20,000 and was recommended $8,000. Paintball Team requested $7,500 and was recommended $3,000. Paintball Team requested $7,500 and was requested, Okay. Rodeo Team / Club requested $6,500 and was recommended $6,500. Swim and Dive Club at KSU requested $13,000 and was recommended $6,000. Table Tennis Club requested $4,410 and was recommended $2,120. Tennis Club requested $2,000 and was recommended $2,000. Water Ski Club was requested $11,480 and was recommended $1,170. Women's Club Soccer requested $4,000 and was recommended $4,000. Women's Lacrosse Club was requested $14,800 and was recommended $3,550. Women's Club Volleyball requested $12,450 and was recommended $1,750. There we go. Being enacted that Section 1, the $65,470 dispersed to the sports club shall be allocated as specified above. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, these funds shall be transferred from NISA Sports Club Reserve to the respective accounts on each sports club above or distributed upon signing of the award agreement by the members of the sports club as required by Kansas State University. I now stand for questioning.
Senator Griffith.
So the committee, when making the decision, took a lot of things into consideration and kind of took a holistic approach when allocating funds. The first was we wanted to give each organization their most needed request or their most needed expense from the request. And so for the Disc Golf Club, that was entry fees for the 6 different competitions that they go to. The committee also felt that as far as money well spent, that money could be well spent by other organizations instead of giving them their full $13,000.
Senator Oury.
When I was emailing out to different club presidents to tell them how to apply for this money. One of the things that I wanted them to do was apply for their entire year's budget so that we can specifically look at the breakdown and pick, and so the committee could pick what we wanted to fund. So a lot of these numbers are really big. That's because that's kind of the total cost that it takes their club to operate in a fiscal year.
Senator Glasscock.
Yes, so the men's lacrosse club had a lot of success in their last season. They won their division handily, and so the committee took into consideration success rates of different competition teams, and so that would reflect in their allocation.
Granted.
It seems to be a continuing process. They have, in recent years, consistently been better. Last year, they got close to winning their division as they outlined in their presentation, and their recruitment numbers have been way higher since winning their conference. And so I think that this will be something that will continue on moving forward.
Senator Griffith.
Badminton Club is a new organization, and so they don't have a lot of expenses for travel and different things. Although they do compete, they're not as established as some other organizations.
Are there further questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, thank you. We will move on to Resolution 232443, recommendation to Rec Services regarding a soccer goal. Is there a motion to consider? Senator Griffith. It's been moved and seconded. Will the author please come forward?
Resolution 232443, recommendation to Recreational Services regarding a soccer goal. Authors myself and Carson S. Cuesta, sponsors Student Allocations Committee. Whereas World War I Memorial Stadium hosts a wide variety of sports clubs and athletes on a daily basis for both group and individual trainings and practices. Whereas the turf field at World War I Memorial Stadium was replaced in June of 2020 for an improved practice performance and experience which is not present anywhere else on campus for the typical student. Whereas the Student Allocations Committee met on Sunday, October 29th, 2023 to hear presentations for sports club funding. Whereas the Student Allocations Committee heard from both women's club soccer and men's club soccer about the need to replace a broken goal that is utilized at World War I Memorial Stadium. Whereas it is the opinion of the committee that the goal should be replaced by recreational services because it is a piece of equipment that should and is used for the benefit of everyone at Kansas State University, not just women's club soccer and men's club soccer. Whereas by recreational services supplying a new goal at World War I Memorial Stadium, it relieves a financial burden for the mentioned sports club budgets. And whereas this would allow the Student Allocations Committee to allocate $2,000 elsewhere. Be it resolved that Section 1, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSU SGA, recommends the recreational services supply a new goal at World War I Memorial Stadium to replace the broken one. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to Recreational Services Director Clint Hafliger, Recreational Services Associate Director of Facilities Josh Wondra, Recreational Services Assistant Director of Competitive Sports Quincy Smith, Recreational Services Maintenance and Repair Tech Kevin Frakes, Morrison Family Associate Vice President for Student Wellbeing Kathleen Hatch, Vice President for Academic Success and Student Affairs and Dean of Students, Dr. Thomas Lane, and University President, Dr. Richard H. Linton.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Chair Long.
My original copy did not have the president on it, so that was added. Yes.
Did you get that? Derek?
Thank you.
Are there further questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing as we have exhausted introduction of legislation, we will move into second open period. Are there any speakers for second open period? Chief of Staff Brown.
I'll keep my seal. Oop, sorry, can't speak today. I'll keep myself pretty brief because I know everyone wants to get out of here. I just wanted to let you guys know we have a initiative coming out next week that's going to be a big advertisement, big social media push to bring a program that helps students figure out relatively simply if they're SNAP eligible. This would allow them, if they are SNAP eligible, to receive $250 a month in like food costs, which super helpful, also helps eliminate food insecurity at Kansas State. So please, if you see it on social media, just repost. That's all I'm asking. That's all I've got for you. Have a great night.
Do you stand for questions? Okay. Are there further second open period speakers? Senator Zach, go.
I'm also going to be quick because I'm so tired. I am in Silver Key here at K-State, and I'm on the exec team. My committee is the Elderly Committee, and our service event is tomorrow morning from 8 to 10. We are putting on a free breakfast, coffee, social for the senior citizens in the Alma, Westmoreland, Manhattan, and Wamego area communities. So if you know any cool older people, we don't define what's old. If you feel old enough, you can come. We were baking breakfast stuff before Senate today, so there's some good banana bread I made. It's gonna be fun. So we want to see lots of people come out. So if your grandparents live close, tell them to stop by. It's at the Heritage Home in Alma, which is an intergenerational living facility for it's a daycare and a retirement assisted living facility in the same building. So it's pretty cool. Please let the old people know to stop by tomorrow morning, 8 to 10, Heritage Home in Alma. Thank you.
Coordinator Navarro.
Hey, y'all. Whew. All right. I'm sure this was a really fun Senate. So what I'm here to just say is that I will be passing a recommendation for the campus master plan to involve and have like environmental sustainability as one of the cornerstones. And pretty much all I'm saying is I'm going to pass that legislation. If you want to sponsor it, you want to help author it, let me know. But I'm going to be doing that. So just want to have as many senators. I want you guys to voice your opinions. You know, text me on GroupMe or call me, whatever. All right, thank you.
Are you standing for questions?
Oh, and Feliz Dia de los Muertos.
He is not standing for questions either. Chair Long.
Yeah, I'll stand. Unlike other speakers, I think I'll be here for a long time, actually, because it's my name. Thank you. I've been saving that one all Senate. Next week, we're going to be talking about contractual decreases to the student services fee and some of our long-term budgeting stuff. In reports, I will have a general report on the state of our finances and our budget and such like that, an overview. If there's any questions prior to that that you feel you would like answered that I may not cover, because it's some important stuff, feel free to send that to me so I make that as comprehensive as possible, as well as any questions about the committee's decision making. The more of that we can at least get information-wise dispersed prior to being here, it's a whole lot easier to have a conversation one-on-one and not in this chamber.
Senator Ari.
Certainly, if I receive questions, I will make sure to put them in. I will address all of them in the presentation. Yeah.
Are there further questions for Chair Long? Seeing none, thank you. Are there further second open period speakers? Senator Saya.
So I've put a lot of thought and time recently into the problem of being in Senate and the relative popularity of that office, and asked, how do we make sure that people are involved in this body and take these responsibilities seriously? And what I've come up with is that there are really three pieces to the puzzle to making Senate more popular. The first piece of that puzzle is reducing wasted time. You saw legislation from me tonight that was all about time that I think is wasted and can be better spent. That's one part of the puzzle. Second piece of the puzzle is the significance of being a senator. Does being a senator give you something that you can't have anywhere else? Yeah, it gives you the power to vote, and I introduced legislation that talks about the other half of our responsibility being debating. I think that's part of the puzzle, is how significant is it to be a senator? The third piece to that puzzle is about incentives for being in the office. That can take a lot of different forms, and for especially our higher up leadership, there are really strong incentives towards getting to meet with a lot of important people on campus on a regular basis. But that's not necessarily realistic for every senator in office. And I think, to be fair, for the consequences that we exact for any one option to make being senator more popular, whether that's taking time away from people who speak at open period, whether that's restricting certain rights to debate on legislation, I think it's fair that we consider all of our options in making Senate more popular, right? Like, it's all got to work together so that we are compromising fairly across the board. What I'm getting at here is I'm really curious whether there's any appetite in this room for considering compensation for senators or other officers in SGA. I don't know what that would look like. We offer certain officers compensation, and I think if we're having all these other conversations about how important being a senator is, I personally, it's something that I would like to explore. So, by show of hands, who might be interested in asking questions about it? Okay. You'll hear more from me later. Thanks. Yeah, sure.
Are there questions? Yes. Yeah.
Honestly, I have no idea what that could look like. Right now, certain officers are offered like a wage. That's only a couple. Most officers who are compensated are given some percentage of their tuition in scholarship, scaled to the responsibility of their job, and or a parking pass.
Senator Zach, go.
Do you think the argument could be made that if we consider the possibility of compensation for senators, that people will run for Senate for the wrong reasons, and then we'll have people that don't really care about what they're doing in here just for the compensation of it?
On paper, that's definitely a concern. But any officer now that receives compensation would tell you that the compensation you receive for the time that you spend is not worth the money. It is a reasonable reflection of the amount of time that you spend. It's not trying to make you rich. You could make much more money with a job. But spending time here is asking you to not spend time offsetting other academic expenses.
Caucus Leader Kidd.
Do you know of any other institutions that have any models related to compensating their student senators?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I do know, I just came back from the Big 12 conference with all of the other Big 12 SGAs. And I know that some of them do, it is more popular to do stipends or parking passes than to do like any sort of wage. I know that we've had conversations about like asking parking services to make give student senators free parking on Thursdays so they can park in the garage on Thursdays when they have to attend Senate. So there are things that we've looked at other than giving money to senators that would compensate them for their time and be specific to the work that they're doing. Are there further questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. Are there further second open period speakers? Cox Leader Kit.
All right, the clock has struck 9, so I'll be super brief. So I just put this in our Senate group me. How many of us, raise your hand, how many of us know at least one high school student in general? Doesn't matter how old they are. Okay, cool, raise the roof, yeah. So as most of us may know, I work in the College of Ed, mainly doing recruitment, so this is why this is germane to me and my role. But I just want to share with you all that Kansas is having their Kansas Apply Free Days, so that allows high school students the opportunity to apply to 7 public universities, 19 community colleges, 6 technical colleges, and 21 private member institutions, all in the state of Kansas. So that's a really good opportunity for us to allow to allow high school students to apply to attend K-State with no application fee. That I would say is what can be one of the small pieces of the puzzle with helping us with our enrollment. Sometimes when I talk to students, one of the things they say is that, I want to apply to all these schools, but I don't want to have to pay the application fee for all these schools. So that is going to be it's going to be next week from November 7 to 9. All the information's in the link that you were sent. So there's a special link on the page that students can use to get that waiver for applying for free. So make sure you pass that their way, and happy applying. Thank you, Senate. Go Cats. Thank you. Unless there are questions. Sorry.
Senator Griffith.
If you could email basically what you just talked about to us.
Or is it like just Senate 2324? Yes. Any other questions?
Seeing none, thank you.
Ciao. Thanks.
Are there further second open period speakers? Seeing none, we will move into Senate shoutouts.
Alrighty. Shout out to Adabus. Shout out to Section E, so dramatic. Shout out to Spicy Sentence. Shout out to not being able to hear questions through the Zoom. Shout out to the Nick Saya show tonight. Shout out to Objections, keeping Senate proper. Shout out to money being requested and recommended from SAC. Shout out to Summarizing. Shout out to Andrew, your makeup looks very pretty tonight. Shout out to Nick for owning the mic all night. Shout out to trying to play tic-tac-toe. Shout out to Kate for making him read the numbers even though he didn't have to. Shout out to Andrew's Dia les Mos Muertos makeup. And shout out to the problem of being in Senate, in quotes.
Okay, now we will move into reference legislation. Bills 33 and 34 will go to the Senate Operations Committee. Bill 35 will go to the DEIB Committee. Bill 36 will go to the Student Services Fee Committee. Bill 37 will go to the Student Allocations Committee. And Resolution 43 will also go to the Student Allocations Committee. Chair Cuesta. It has been moved and seconded. That is a motion to question the decision of the chair. But I've already referred.
You can withdraw your motion, or you can let both of the references stand. Or if this motion passes, you can withdraw your reference, but it's not a question of the decision of the chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think a couple of things on these two particular bills. The first thing that I think is that given the Senate operations track record this week, that we should not have a situation like that again where it took a great amount of effort to get a bill in final action. That's my first thought. My second thought is that this bill likely needs several weeks in committee to do some tune-up. And I think that the members on Senate Exec are well positioned to do that because it affects cabinet directors' speaking rights, for example. And the leader of that particular branch is in Exec. So I think that, and I would encourage you to send this bill to Exec, both these bills to Exec. Thank you.
Hi, so this is debate in the negative on the motion to refer this to the Senate Executive Committee. Under our bylaws, the role of the Senate Executive Committee is to give like projects or problems to other committees. Our role as the Senate Executive Committee is not to handle these decisions. We are people whose opinions are going to be heard on this either way because we are all people that are in leadership positions. I think that if there are people that are interested in what is happening in this bill, then they are more than happy to go to the Senate Operations Committee. Yes, there are members of the executive and legislative branch on Senate Exec, but this is legislation that is going through the legislative branch because it is the role of the legislative branch. Therefore, I think that it should not be referred to the Senate Executive Committee. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? President Stout.
I understand previous speakers' questions about the role of Senate Exec, but I would like to stick to what has been clearly set as precedent in referring legislation to Exec. Also, being Chief Executive of SGA, I would like to be involved in the conversations surrounding this, as it is a pretty fundamental change in what's going on in not just the legislative branch, but SGA as a whole. So with that, I would like to see it sent to Senate Exec.
Is there further debate in the negative? Chair Blood.
The purview of the Senate Operations Committee is to do just that, Senate operations. This bill is about speaking privileges, debating privileges within Senate, an operation of Senate. So should go to the Senate Operations Committee there, as well as all committee meetings, including the Senate Operations Committee, are open meetings. Those are allowed to be attended by everyone. In fact, everyone has speaking rights and privileges in committee meetings, and this bill does not change that fact in any way, shape, or form. I personally don't see any major revisions, as the previous speaker mentioned, but that'd be for the committees kind of to decide. But what I do see is an opportunity for anyone in this room to come to Union 205 next Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. And if they have discussions that they'd like to have on this legislation, it can do so within the Senate Operations Committee.
Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? Senator Saya.
So 1 week ago, I would have been very willing to accept this abstract, idyllic measure of the Senate Operations Committee. But after what happened this week, I'm not sure that the members of that committee are necessarily interested in negotiating legislation in good faith and making sure that everyone's opinions are reflected. more importantly, there it is. I absolutely do think that this bill warrants changes, right? Like the concerns that I heard tonight in questioning are not the first concerns that I've heard since I introduced the bill. As the author, I'm absolutely interested in holding this legislation for multiple weeks and revisiting revisions so that whatever product we bring to the floor really has all branches behind it. So to the extent that I have credibility to speak on what the bill should and shouldn't be changed to, I think it warrants more weeks and it warrants time in Senate Exec.
Seeing as that was debate in the positive, is there further debate in the negative? Senator Griffith.
To start, I would like to rebuff a few points made by previous speakers about our committee, the Senate Operations Committee. We in the committee vote and discuss based on what we view as right, and we viewed a previous piece of legislation and the actions we took on it as right. And so we would do the exact same thing with this bill. And now, more importantly, the decision of the chair was to send this bill, which is about the operations of Senate, to the committee, which helps operate Senate. If it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, chances are it's a duck. So I urge you to vote with the original decision of the chair to send bills 33 and 34 to the Senate Operations Committee.
Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? Is there further debate in the negative? And is there any... Chair Suchanek?
If it is Senate Exec's job to refer this legislation to other committees, could it not go to Exec first for a week or two and then get sent to Ops?
That is a thing that could happen. It is not the belief of the chair that that should happen. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, is there further debate in the positive? Is there further debate in the negative? Is there any further debate at all? Seeing none, we will move into a hand vote. All of those in favor of sending this to the Senate Executive Committee, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. Seeing as that passes, this will be sent to both the Senate Operations Committee and the Senate Executive Committee, because my referral still stands and I am choosing not to withdraw. Now that we have exhausted reference, we will move into second roll call.
Atchison. Biggs. Blood. Broughton. Bruckner. Cup. Koch.
Here.
Compton.
Here.
Cuesta. Dennis. Dratz. Glasscock. Griffith. Haynes. Hartzell. Heatherman. Hoffmans. Hulse. Hunley. Jacobson. Kirchen.
Here.
Kidd. Kermer. Kinsey. Lilly. Long. Lynn. Mason. Melcher.
Here.
Moore. O'Malley. Oury. Pelton. Porter. Rivard. Rodriguez Melendez. Rogers. Syed Nick. Salmon. Streetman. Strunk. Sushanik. West. Wolf. And Zacko. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Senator Griffith. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any objections? Have a good night.